Thank you everybody for joining us here today to mourn the loss of Mr. Rogers. He was a father, a friend, a teacher, a brother, an uncle, a mentor. He impacted all of our lives in very special ways, and we're going to be bringing up a few people to eulogize him. For our first speech, we're going to have his nephew come up.
I want to thank everyone who has gathered here today to celebrate the life of my uncle, Mr. Rogers. My uncle taught me a lot about myself as I grew up. He taught me that life is an adventure as well as a blessing. And also the understanding of failure. This is why teaching was his calling. He was so blessed with knowledge that God gave him the assignment of sharing it with others. He taught me that at least everyone in their life will get knocked down. What defines you as a person is how you embrace that failure in order to stand tall again. That is what my uncle had preached, and it had stuck with me ever since. I know he gave it all that he had. In his time here on earth, his meaning of life was to be there for others in their time of need. From being there if you needed a shoulder to cry on, to giving you the shirt off his back. My uncle was always there if you needed him to be. He was very blunt, but he always told you what you needed to hear and not what you wanted to hear. And that is why I'll always be grateful for him. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Next up, we're going to have one of his students from his church come up to speak.
Thank you all for taking the time to be here. It means a lot to every one of us. As we all know, Mr. Rogers was an extraordinary man. He impacted the lives of every person he came across. I met Mr. Rogers when I was 6 years old. It was just my mother and I at the time. One day we were walking to the store and this man came up to us and handed us a flyer to his church. We ended up going that Sunday and it changed our lives. After that, the church was like a second home to us. We would see Mr. Rogers every week, sometimes twice. He taught us children our Sunday school. We loved him because he would take care of us and always had fun activities planned. I remember him as a happy man, a giving man. He practically saw me grow up. I always knew I could count on him. He was someone I looked up to and would seek out for advice. I remember when my great-grandmother passed away, it had a big impact on me and I was in a dark place. He gave me the most impactful words of advice. He told me to think of life as a story, a tragedy, and an adventure all wrapped up into one. Think of life as a plot unfolding as the development of character and personality. Life is tragedy. The truth is, we all die. This can either be ignored or viewed as an inconvenience. And lastly, to think of life as an adventure, the thrill of living life to the fullest and taking chances. It is living life by taking risks, even risking life sometimes. Mr. Rogers reflected all of these things. Another time he impacted my life was when I had doubts in my faith. Every person has gone through a moment of weakness, a time in their life that caused them to question their beliefs. When this happened to me, I was told by my loved ones, God as a universal spirit cannot be comprehended just in terms of God's existence. I was told by my loved ones, God as a universal spirit cannot be comprehended just in terms of God's present existence, but must be comprehended through a long period as a process. Once you have reached this point in your faith, you will be confident enough to not question it anymore, even though one could not know anything about him, but to act as confidently as if I were absolutely certain of his existence. Mr. Rogers had a good life. Not only was he successful, but he had a strong faith and was very well respected by many people who cared for him. Thank you.
One's own free, unfettered choice, one's own fancy, however wild it may be, one's one fancy worked up at times to frenzy. This is the most adventurous advantage, which is always overlooked. Mr. Rogers never ridiculed anyone over what they they wanted, their beliefs, what they needed. Sometimes he said the weirdest of things you just never really understood, but it always got you thinking later on in life. To me, it meant that my adventures were based on all my choices. I have the freedom to shape my life in any direction I see fit. That was something I always held close to my heart. My choices always mattered, not just to me, but to the people around me. With everything I did, I touched the life of those around me just as he did. He showed me that if there was anything to keep in life, it would be yourself. Yeah, he always kind of made his own little characters when he played a role and such, but he never lost his true self. Always stick to your morals and self-beliefs and to never sway. However, always be adaptable, especially in regards to like other religions. Now, there were plenty of times that Mr. Rogers and I did not see eye to eye. I could tell you many of the stories of the fights we got into whenever we met up every weekend to talk to the coffee shops about just everything kind of going on in life. But that never really tore a hole in our relationship of a mentorship. He respected my beliefs much like I had his. The believer meets God not only in moments of worship, but also when through the urging subconscious he feels the pressure of the divine demand upon his life. While I wasn't the most firm believers that could have been, this quote he always said just always stuck with me. Because even in my darkest of times, I still felt a presence of sort that helped lift away my sorrows and all my burdens. Maybe it's just one of those, that's kind of how the world works kind of thing. But I don't think of that. I believe that Mr. Rogers was always acting through another to kind of touch those around him. The law in its majestic equality forbids the rich as well as the poor to sleep under the bridges, to beg in the streets, and to steal bread. Treat unto others as you wish to be treated. Never once did he leave anyone behind in any way, shape, or form. He managed to include everyone, no matter who they were or where they came from. He didn't see people as a materialistic object. He saw the good in everyone, even if they didn't see it themselves. He was kind, he was compassionate, and he would find any and every opportunity to do good by others. He showed me random acts of kindness. It wasn't seeking to make yourself feel better or to do good in hopes of earning a reward. It was doing the right thing because that's what's good. Goodbye, Mr. Rogers.
Hello everyone, thank you all for being gathered here today to commemorate Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers was a professor that really impacted my life. He was not like any other professor. He made sure that he had a close relationship with each and every one of his students. He showed me the meaning of my life at a very young age. He made me understand how life is all about learning and experiences to reach a certain goal. He helped me find this goal and worked toward it as my ultimate life mission. He did not only teach me about my life mission, but about life itself, about how I can surpass every obstacle that is put in my path, especially those having to do with living in a society where women are seen as less. Coming from a sexist society, he made me realize how being a woman is a blessing rather than a curse. He showed me how we are equally as free as men and as everyone on the planet. Likewise, he made me believe in myself and showed me how we are all beautiful in our certain way. Beauty does not have a concrete definition. We all have our own definition. He saw the beauty in every one of his students. I am sure that he was as impactful in his other students' lives as he was in mine. We are all sad to see him go, but he is now looking down at us and still impacting our lives.
Thank you all for your kind words. We will be having a reception later today. Please feel free to take as much time as you need roaming the grounds of the school. Thank you.
Sounds good.
This funeral kind of reminds me that I'm supposed to live life to the fullest, you know? Like, isn't there some quote, this life has meaning only by reference to the next one, or to say that this life itself is insignificant?
Yeah, a lot of religions, they make you think like you just gotta go through and live life, and then just die and be reborn, And I was wondering, like, what if after you die, there's nothing there except pitch black, Not knowing what's to come to the end is kind of scary. And if they think if there's a God, maybe in the last couple minutes of your life, you'll recite and believe in God. You know?
Well, you don't even have to really focus on the afterlife. Like, many people think that God exists just because he can explain certain things in life. But there's times in the past where things couldn't be explained and we figured it out later on. So we justify God's existence with that because he's kind of naive and like, lazy to me.
Yeah, even if you don't understand like what's God's purpose in your life, you know, there's always that in the back of your mind where you want to believe in something. And I feel like that's when God comes into play. And that makes sense. That's what makes everybody sense of why we want to live. Purpose of living.
Oh, didn't realize there'd be people here. Hi guys. So here we join you. So what are you all talking about?
We were talking about life and God. Kind of stirs up questions.
Yeah. I've always wondered like what religion is true. Like, because come on, someone just died. Do you think like they went to heaven or hell or got reincarnated? Like, do we even really know any of this?
That kind of sparks up the question what is real, you know? Kind of, you have math to prove physically what is true or not. But in religion, you can't prove God is real with numbers. So it's kind of based off faith.
I mean, this is exactly why I'm not religious. I don't understand how there can be multiple religions, if each one believes in a separate God.
For me, I'm kind of similar as well. I mean, I have my own spiritual beliefs and I've experienced things that I can't explain. But definitely my view has changed about religion and spirits and supernatural. And I'm open to new experiences and having that outlook changed again. I mean, if we're going to be talking about reality, I mean, basically talking about truth. What is real, what isn't real. Because I mean, what is true to someone's religion might be completely true, completely different for someone else's and still be entirely true. I mean, who really decides what's true and what isn't? Is that good? I think so, and that's our time. Yeah. Hey guys. We're just talking about life.
What about life?
I mean, just about religion, reality, what religions are true, stuff like that.
I mean, I remember one time a priest sat me down and talked to me about life, and if we think of life as a mission, then we should always be dedicating ourselves to the big picture. For me, it was always working hard to get a baseball scholarship and making sure I played at the next level after high school. There's a quote by Soren Kierkegaard that says, "The thing is to understand myself, to see what God really wishes me to do." And I think that's an idea we should all abide by.
I totally agree with that. I mean, I think God has totally given my life meaning. But it kind of got difficult for me, like as I got closer to my religion, because I started thinking about how if God gave me a purpose in life, then what is that? And am I living up to it? And that was super scary for me. I don't know about y'all. Then I realized that people like St. Augustine and these like really like devout Catholics that I looked up to started questioning that themselves like really strongly. And I guess that brought me like peace and closure. I'm really gonna miss it. Well, I think about my mission in life, and teachers like Mr. Rogers, they really like inspired me to become a teacher. You know, like I want to cultivate my own moral personality, so that way I can help students cultivate that in them. That's what Mr. Rogers did for me, bro.
see that impacts you. So, on those bodies, they have those types of challenges.
I mean, I think if you think of, like, one of the biggest lessons he taught me was that if you think of life as something that just never gets better, and you continue to live your life not expecting there to be, like, greatness all the time, and you're okay with where you're at, and you can make it through anything. And it's that lesson that's going to stick with me, that I'm going to share with others. And his impact is going to keep going and going and going. And hopefully, like, in the classroom, that's what my impact.
But does that kind of relate to like a religious standpoint? As in, some people only live this life to die in the end, to go to the afterlife. No one actually knows if there is an afterlife. If it's why not? You don't know what happens after you die.
Me personally, I used to really believe in the afterlife because of my family's religion, but now I see it as it's just people not wanting to accept that there's God. So I don't believe. I love Mr. Rogers, but I just believe that there's no God.
I mean, have you thought of passed down flavor though? So when it was shared with me, it was shared to me as there's a chocolate fountain in this, like, far off forest. And if you believe in the chocolate fountain, and you go into the forest and it's there, you get to eat chocolate. But if you don't believe in the chocolate fountain, and you go into the forest, and it is there, then you don't get to eat it. And so what are you willing to bet that there isn't an afterlife? Are you willing to get there and see that there is one, and not be able to partake in the goodness of it because you didn't believe it while you were here?
But then some people live their life so cautiously that they don't want to mess anything up for it. It would prevent them from going to the afterlife.
I mean, that kind of connects to, like, rational faith. You know, thinking, like, trying to reason that there has to be justice in the afterlife. But I also believe that you have to, like, believe irrationally too. That you have to have this irrational faith that everything is going to be okay. That even though you can't see it, you're going to be able to take it to where you want to go.
But, so, if we're talking about religion and faith, I come from a household with two different religions that believe similar but different things. So I've never fully understood what could be true because my parents believe two different things to be true. Which do I actually know is true? Like, which one am I supposed to sit there and accept as truth? Or can both of them be true since both of my parents believe it to be true?
If we're talking about truth, there are two different types of truth. There's empirical truth, and there is necessary truth. And with empirical truths, those are based off of experiences, and necessary truths are based off of reason. So you got to kind of, look at the picture from your parents' point of view and see, is it reason or is it based off of stuff that they have experienced in the past? When we're talking about truth.
I guess in that regard, for my mother, it would be based off of experience, because she's a breast cancer survivor, and she became very, very religious and firmly believes everything from her religion to be true now that she's gone through that experience. But I guess for my father, it's reason-based, because as far as I know, he hasn't had any profound life-changing experience. But I guess it just boils down to, for at least for me, I guess it boils down to your experiences, and that influences what you believe to be true. At least that's how I would look at it personally.
I think that brings up the issue of relativism. Like, is it possible for your truth to be different than my truth? And I strongly believe that if you're saying that your truth and my truth are different, then it's not really the truth.
I have a little bit of a problem with that. For me, kind of like how Thomas was saying, that I think everyone's truth is based on what they experience in life and what they grew up with. So necessarily what I believe is morally right and morally wrong is not going to be the same for someone who grew up in a totally different social status than me, a totally different country from me. So truths can be different for different people. That's what I do.
Yeah, for me, I think finding what's true to oneself is like important because I know we're all different and I know we're all like all of these things are different. So that's why I feel like finding our own truth is very important, like for us to live our lives and because we all know the things that are different from one another. So, yeah.
Has anybody had an existential crisis recently? Because, like, I think about Descartes often, and he says, I think, therefore I am, right? And for me, it's a big deal because when I was a lot younger, I used to like get nervous for like the world around me didn't exist. Like that movie, The Truman Show, where like everybody was like made actors or something. But I don't know. Descartes says like I think therefore I am, so that means that I exist. And then if I exist and I can think of God, then God has to exist. And if God exists, then that means He cannot deceive me because He's good. And the world exists. I remember reading that recently and my mind was blown.
There was a book I read, and something that really stood out to me was you still have to defend the one that you believe to be true. And I'm guessing this goes back to my point where it's saying we have to find out what you do and not be afraid to defend them because it's just like what you believe and what you live by. And we're all not going to be the same, and we're all not going to have the same truth because we've gone through different things. So, yeah, that really like came to my attention.
Go.
You know, I think I'm really gonna miss Mr. Rogers. Like he was one of those people where he was always super hardworking, and it's like he was always like reaching for happiness and all that. And I think that's just that's the whole meaning of life, like to have a mission and to search for like your own meaning to life.
Yeah, I remember when Mr. Rogers told me that it was impossible to exist or have much meaning without passion because he was so passionate about his job and passionate about serving others. It made me realize how like I need to find a passion, and I realized how I was passionate about serving others and helping others, and it allowed me to see like what I wanted to do with my life, and that's why I chose being a bio major because I want to become a doctor so I can help serve others.
Yeah, it was the same thing for me. I remember I was so concerned, like I just wanted to have a stable job and be safe, and that's why I was going into accounting. And then Mr. Rogers was like, why are you going to do that? Like, life is an adventure. Like, you need to be passionate about something. And so now it's like, you know what? I changed my major to criminology, and I'm going for that goal of fighting human trafficking. And that's all 100% because of Mr. Rogers.
One time I had like a bad experience, and he told me that every experience makes us a better person, either it is bad or good. And I believe that we need to go through difficult situations to know like who we are. So.
And then on top of that, he always treated everyone with the mutual respect that he expected back. He always treated life as it was beautiful and made by God himself, and he never really that's what he enforced all the time. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. He was one of those people where like he believed in creativity, and like he encouraged us to have creativity, but on top of that, like he understood that like when you have this power to be creative, you also have the power to like create your own morals. So I definitely agree with you. Like life to him was just about a painting of like creating what's good in society.
Yeah, like I remember I struggled with failure, and he talked to me about life experiences and how you can perceive those in many ways. So I started to look at my failures as just experiences and lessons, and they were like just allowing me to be one step closer to becoming successful. So I don't see failure as something bad or demeaning anymore.
And then, like, speaking of lessons, one of the things that he always taught was that if you put your selfishness and your desires aside, like, you're able to kind of sympathize with everyone else and realize that we're all on the same boat, we're all in this world together, we're all experiencing the same things. It's not just you, it's not what you want, it's what everyone wants, and it affects everyone. And that's what he always taught.
Yeah, he was definitely for the people. Like, for him, it was like everything was about society, everything was about being equal. And, you know, when you can kind of like be selfless like that, you can really find the power of equality.
He always told me that God made us the same, so there is no way why people should discriminate just because of race or color. We are all the same. We have the same dignity, so we should like have this all same opportunities.
He definitely, there was God, you know, existing in his life, and it was one of those things where if you had God, then you could pursue the right to happiness, and you can pursue justice. God was prevalent, and so was justice in his life.
Yeah, he told me that happiness is nothing less than an entirely good life with everything in balance. And I remember thinking, like, what the heck do you mean? And then it made me realize, you know, happiness is sort of like a seesaw. There's going to be obstacles thrown at your way. God's going to throw things at your way. You may not really understand, like, why he's doing that. So you may be leaning towards one side and going down the wrong path. But once you reflect on what is genuinely good and what you want to do, then you'll be more balanced and you'll find, like, concrete happiness.
And people are good, and if everything that God creates is good, like, God is good, we're a part of that. We're a part of that greater good, and we contribute to that. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. See, Mr. Rogers was a man of God. See, the difference between believing in God and acknowledging that God exists is that believing in God is not just knowing that he exists, but also following the path that he gives you and believing that it is the righteous path for you. And I believe Mr. Rogers did that instead of just acknowledge his existence. He didn't just say, oh, you know, God exists, but I want to try to do it my way. He thoroughly said, I'm going to follow that.
That kind of ties into what he talked about me with, about morals and everything. You know, sometimes our morals go against our interests, and though we know, like, what the right thing to do is, we don't always want to do that. But when we reflect on our beliefs and our morals, it makes us realize, like, oh, I should do this instead of this. Like, I remember one time I didn't prepare well enough for one of my biology exams, and I really wanted to cheat because two other people had told me, oh, well, we're going to cheat, just do it with us. But I reflected on what I believed in and my morals, and I thought about what Mr. Rogers told me. So I chose not to cheat and just take the exam and try to remember what I knew from the lectures.
Yeah, I remember he always talked about morals with me, and he talked about, there was this one time, and I totally didn't understand what he meant, about non-moral and moral evil, and I was like, how can evil be moral? And then he talked about, it's about, like, the choices you make, so kind of like how you chose not to cheat on the test. Like, moral evil is like when you choose to be evil, and the non-moral evil is when it's like just something that happens, like, you know, a natural disaster, like God being God. And I think for me, when he taught me that, like, I thought of that, like, all right, people die every day, but like we have the opportunity to choose to help them and protect them. So like we have to choose our own moral evils.
As you said, Molly, the people like around you like told you like just cheat, we're all gonna do it. He always said to me that it is very important the people you are surrounded by. The people he always was surrounded by were happy. They always wanted the good for you. So he always taught me that it is very important to surround with people that really care about you and not just they want something or like that. But
Yeah, I can tell that Mr. Rogers, by the way he was and the way he treated people, this goes for everybody, that he was influenced by what he was taught. You know, the people that taught him along the way, the people that, you know, had impact on his life, probably followed some of the same morals that he did, in which he took on.
And that's kind of what he always mentioned. He always told me that without like other people, we can't serve a mission. Without other people, we can't live life beautifully. Without other people, we can't have that honor because we don't have that human interaction to hold us accountable without other people. Life and relationships give life meaning, and those relationships are abstract and they're concrete all at once, and they're what make us human. That's what connects us. It's what makes everything connected, and it brings us together, and it helps us learn, and it grows, and without it we can't survive. We just can't.
Right, and like sometimes it may be hard to understand like why certain connections happen, why certain things happen. And Mr. Rogers once told me, you know, you need to listen to the logos. You need to listen to the word, the actual meaning, because everything that happens has meaning and has like something behind it. And though you may be, you know, going through something at a certain point, you may not understand it, but later on after you've gone through it, then you'll understand, oh, that's why that happened. Like, you know, say like you're sort of an underdog and you study super hard for something and you still get a bad grade. And you're like, well, why did that happen? That person didn't study as much as I did, but they did better. And then later on you realize, oh, this is why it happened. So I think it's really important to really reflect on things that happen in life and realize that it does have a meaning. You may just not always understand it at that point.
I remember Mr. Rogers was, you know, a very good teacher. He was very fair to like everybody. I think I once read in a book that in a good society there would be something more than prosperity, but there will also be justice. And what mine says that those who are good will be rewarded, you know, at the end of the term of their lives. So I don't feel like.
Yeah, Mr. Rogers once told me actually that we have to be like careful with justice. Because sometimes people like take justice and they adapt it to like what they're feeling. So, say for example, back in my country where there's a lot of gangs and things, there have been like videos of cops beating up gang members now. So, people might you know like take justice into their own hands, and your version of justice might not be what's actually like right.
Yeah.
Going back to him, I think here in the United States we have a really good government that kind of protects people from doing that, and it creates justice in the right way. But I think somewhere where we are lacking, I read a book once and it said that the free market shows too little ability to care for the poor. So the poor get poorer and the richer get rich. So I remember Mr. Rogers once telling me that you must help people whenever you can, because we live in a really good place and we went to a really good school together. And we were all pretty fortunate, and driving to school every day we would see those people that needed help and that would ask for help, but a lot of people just drive right past them.
Yeah, no, definitely here in the States you are like really guaranteed your rights. Like, so I mean, as opposed to like other places, justice here like really like guarantees that you get like the basic thing that humans need, you know? So you get, I mean, you have the freedom of speech, you can't, I don't know, you're entitled to your opinion, you're innocent until proven guilty, you know?
Yeah, I think we have a pretty good justice system here, even though sometimes it's corrupt and it shows preference to some specific groups rather than others.
Back to what you were saying, I think you mentioned something about like rich and poor, right? Something that's been on my mind and something that came up in a book was who should rule, like people of wealth or people of good moral character. I mean, who knows? Like, what do you think?
I think it should be a democracy where we choose who rules. Like I said, what he was saying, in the United States we have the freedom of speech, which is something that a lot of countries don't have. So I think we have a pretty good system going right now, but at the same time, I think the government can be corrupt, and like I was saying, sometimes they prefer certain groups other than others. So So I think the power should be more on the people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the justice system can be like corrupt and things, but I mean, it's necessary like to keep in place. I remember I don't know. I don't remember when he told me, but Mr. Rogers once said that this like notion of utopia is false because utopia both means a good place and nowhere. So there's nowhere that everything's gonna be perfect, but that like basic structure has to exist.
Yeah. I guess it goes back to Mr. Rogers, I guess. He's kind of like a realist, you know, like the world isn't like perfect, you know. In a book I read that, but although we can perhaps imagine a society in which everyone is healthy and wealthy, in which everyone at least respects everyone else, and there is no common poverty and paying everything for everyone, the world we live in, it just isn't like that. It's just not perfect where everyone's going to be healthy and just have wealth. And, you know, I guess like he kind of set that mindset to us.
Yeah, and I think that's why we also need the government, because in order to have order in society, we need someone above us to kind of rule us, to give us laws and guidelines in which to follow, because when we don't, then we end up like his home country, and also I'm from Mexico, so it's the same thing where it just becomes way too corrupt.
One time that I was in Mr. Rogers' class, a bunch of people were just stating their opinions, and he made sure to interrupt everybody and say that we aren't allowed to have opinions on something that we haven't experienced, because it's just easy to assume, and it kind of makes people feel bad whenever you do that. So he talked about empirical truths and how you don't really know the truth until you've actually experienced it. And I can also relate that to something else that he told us once about a philosopher, that I think, therefore I am. You can't assume things about people, but you can try to put yourself in their shoes. If you think that you can relate to them, then maybe you can have somewhat of a say, I think, on their position. You know, I will never experience what an immigrant will feel, or someone that does field labor or anything, but I can try to empathize, and I can try to think that they are someone that I can help, and then in that way I can excuse my assuming. But I remember he would always just say, like, don't assume, because there's different types of truths and you won't know anything until you're actually there.
I think not only that, but I remember there was this time he wrote on the board, you know, took a picture with my Nokia back in the day. I still have it now, but like, he said that like, just say you believe in freedom, for instance, may make you feel proud, righteous, but this has nothing to do with philosophy, or for that matter, with freedom, unless you're willing to spell it out. And you know, what is it exactly you stand for? What is it you believe? What is it that you call freedom? And as you call it, is it so desirable? I think that really made an impact on me, because even like, you know, serving for 3 or 4 years, 4? It all blends together, but you get the point. Like, after my tours of duty, it really made me think, okay, I have to say I believe in the American dream. What does it actually mean? How do I believe that plays out? What does that look like to me? And it really kind of reminded me of that, because, you know, he'd always challenge us. It wasn't just, okay, I'm going to say the Pledge of Allegiance because I'm an American. I'm going to say it because I believe in it, and I believe that because we live in this country, there's certain rights that we have that, you know, we're going to stand for at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. Going back to what you were saying, you spoke a lot about truths and what Mr. Rogers told you, but I believe that the ultimate truth that we have to realize is that we as humans are here on this earth, like, not since the beginning of time. The fact of the matter is, life was here before, life will come here after.
That's true.
So it is important not to get carried away with our freedom. So basically, know your place, know that while you are responsible for many things that happen here, you're not the sole reason that things happen.
That's true. That's true. Not only that, but I just remember how he'd always encourage us. That, like, talking with another person not only forces us to be clear and concrete we believe, but it allows us to engage in a second essential feature of doing our philosophy, you know, arguing for our views. I remember he always stressed that, like, to have those conversations with people who think differently. Maybe people don't believe, like you said, that, like, you know, human beings are the center of the universe. But have that conversation with them so you can really, like, solidify your own beliefs and be able to, like, fully talk about that. Because I think at the end of the day, you know, he really wanted us to be said what we believe, but make that be our beliefs and be able to defend our own beliefs, you know.
Yeah, Mr. Rogers definitely most of what he said was like for us to be like really aware of what we're doing. So basically, I remember he and I once spoke about 15 minutes about this thing. That while you may believe that something is right or true for that matter, what you think might not really align with what really is going on. So you have to like really be aware of what you're doing and if that's going to affect someone. Basically, as you said, put yourself in someone else's shoes.
That's true. You know, and there's another, I remember he quoted one time, I forgot who it was from, but he said, or does it refer to certain essential facts, for instance, the fact that I'm a conscious being? Is myself a soul? Yeah, again, I think he really stressed like that, trying to be aware of all this kind of stuff. I mean, we were like, what, 3rd, 4th grade? But he was still kind of opening our eyes to this because like, you know, the public school system wasn't there for us in that matter, but he was. He went beyond, you know, he wasn't there to teach, he was there to like help us grow, you know?
And in that time when there was a bunch of questions that we had about everything,
right.
He would always say like human reason can answer any basic question in philosophy. Not so much philosophy then that time, but now it relates to us. We can have all these questions about the universe and why we exist and what's our purpose, but if you think about it and you weigh out the cons and the pros and you use reason and logic to answer the questions, you can definitely like minimize down to one answer that will somehow explain the things that you want to know.
Definitely.
Mr. Rogers, like, what do you think of his classes? Because like he placed a lot of like freedom and stuff. I remember he was pretty patriotic and stuff.
Oh, me?
Or anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was very patriotic and he taught me a lot about freedom and what that means in the United States. Because I remember he told me once, off of a book that he read, and he said that freedom is a word that excites everybody.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he mentioned that freedom is the absence of all restraints. But then he asked me, is being left alone completely, is that freedom? And that question kind of stuck to me.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it can look at as like two-sided because some people think being alone is a good thing because you're unbothered by like anything in the exterior realm, you know. But then again, it can't be. So it's like I think he kind of said that it can be one of two things, definitely. He also like I remember he emphasized just like how important freedom is for us, and he was very just like instilling that freedom was just very important. It was imperative in our lives.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we have complete freedom here in the United States. Like, of course, we have the freedom of speech, which we mentioned earlier, and that's something that a lot of countries don't have, so we're really fortunate of.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we are pretty controlled in what we can and can't do, which I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, just because it creates order. Like I said before, and it also makes sure that people don't hurt each other. So, yeah.
I guess that kind of ties into like free will. You know, like we can do whatever we want if we're determined to do it. But then again, it can also be a bad thing depending on how somebody uses their free will to do what they want to do, whether it can be good or evil. But I definitely think that freedom was just such an imperative part of Mr. Rogers' life, and so it kind of left like a legacy on us that freedom can be looked at so many different ways. But you just had to like, I guess you had to make your own definition of freedom.
Something that he taught us that I wasn't completely aware of is that in the 19th Amendment, it gives the government the right to take away everybody's freedom who are incarcerated.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that was crazy and that will stick with me forever because out of all the teachers that I had, like he was the only one that actually brought that.
Yeah.
And like made it look that's one.
Yeah. I think to sum up freedom, I think I read in a book somewhere that, you know, what is far more difficult are the cases in which there is no evident oppressor and no obvious suffering, or in which there is no clear context or nothing defines definite to react against. I guess that being said, like, there's nothing that like freedom can go against. Like, people like, I guess to put it simply, like, we can't understand other people's freedoms because it's defined by like their own definition. So there's not like one meaning of what is freedom, what isn't freedom. Like so many things, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I think freedom is super relative. And some people may settle for what they have, and other people may protest because they don't think their freedom is enough. But for others, they're really happy with what is given to them.
How I think, I'm pretty sure it was one of those days. I think we were doing like our history or social studies class or whatever. He says, you know, freedom can be a means to the good life. But like other means, freedom can also become an end in itself.
Yeah.
I think it really goes back to what you said, like how important it is.
Yeah.
That we don't take it for granted at the end of the day. Like the fact that we were given these freedoms, we need to like express them properly in a sense. And just to keep in mind that, like, you know, those can be taken away if we make certain choices. We are free to make those choices, but if we do, there are consequences. And I think especially as, you know, youngins like we were, it was important to learn that, like, we are free to, for example, cuss at our parents. But if we do that, there are consequences to that. I think that was good that he kind of showed us that distinction between the freedom we have, but the limitations we need to put on ourselves even with that freedom.
Yeah, for sure. And then, like you were saying, that we can't take it for granted, because I know at the university that we all went to, there's a lot of people with DACA recipients, and what a lot of people aren't aware of is that those people weren't even allowed to drive or to work, and we couldn't even take those people out of a group and like say like, oh yeah, it's them. Like they look like the rest of us, you know?
Right.
So it's something that we just can't take for granted, because some people may be happy with what they have, but others are still fighting for their freedom.
Not only that, but like we have that picture of the good life. You know, people work hard for success. They're working towards that retirement. You know, have security and all that. Enjoy themselves. You know, enough money to buy whatever they want. But at the same time, like I think he really showed us too that, like with DACA, for example, not everyone has that same opportunity. I mean, we need to be aware of that because it's just inconsiderate if you don't take that into account. Not everyone will be given the same things you are given. I think he really challenged us, even like we were that young, to just keep that in mind and really like be considerate. I think I really appreciate that he taught me that at a young age.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he definitely like also taught us to like manage what you have. So yeah, you have to like be aware that you are in a like privileged position, and that you have to be considerate towards others. But he also like I mean, at least like with me, he always like preached that we how do I say it? I can't remember what he really said. That I got completely lost.
What he always would tell us though is just to strive to be happy. So in appreciating what we have and making sure to look back and take a reflection of our life and say, you know what, I have this and this and this, even though I don't have the good things, our like main philosophy should be to get as much pleasure out of life as you can. Because if you don't, then you're always going to be looking at the negatives. There's always going to be things we don't have and we want, but if we realize all the things that we actually have, then we can go much farther and get much more pleasure out of our life.
Definitely. That reminds me too how even like, you know, even at a public school like we were at, I think he still kind of showed us the importance of religion in that concept. Like, to get the most out of our life, if we profess, you know, Catholic, Jewish, whatever, we profess that and we follow that to the T. We let that like pervade into our entire life. That helps reach that point, you know, where we really like live up to our potential and take advantage of all the opportunities that life gives us at the end of the day.
I think it's like very good because at certain points during his teachings, he kind of like just preached like, hey, life is like a mission, and any opportunity you get, you have to like take advantage of it. So it's definitely something that's been instilled in me, like even over the years. Any opportunity that comes, it's just, even if it's daunting or not, to live life to the fullest. Any opportunity that comes, you have to take advantage.
Definitely.
Yeah, there's definitely like time for everything. I mean, I remember he once said, I mean, there's time to party, there's time to study, there's time to sleep, there's time, I mean, there's time for us, so don't like get carried away in something.
No, and some people are so hungry for power and success that it literally consumes them. Like our
how do I say, the culture of America is just like, don't rest. Like, there's always striving for more. Keep going, like, advance, do the most that you can. But we forget to, you know, take it back and take time for our religion, or take time for the things that we value and believe in, and, you know, actually look back to the things that we enjoy, because we're just so hungry for the power, the status, the wealth, to be able to say that we did it. And that makes, it takes the morality out of doing what you love and your job, like the things that would supposed to humble you, and your service for others turns into something so selfish if you don't do it the right way.
Mr. Rogers definitely allowed us to see the beauty in what we had, and the beauty in life in general, because he was such a realist, and he did point out all the bad things that we need to be aware of, but in a way that we could help and make it into something positive. Yeah.
I think even like in that realm of positivity too, like he struck me as a very Christian guy, even though he said, because like that positivity that he had seemed to come from something else, you know? And I think he really taught me that to believe in that God exists is not the same as to believe in God. Even without explicitly saying it, like, to believe that he exists one thing, but to believe in God, that changes everything. Should change like how you interact with people. Even like with religion, he taught us about, you know, learned about history, learned about, you know, how the Spaniards conquered Mexico. We learned about Our Lady of Guadalupe. But he learned even within those stories, what do you call that? It was like some SAT vocab. Oh, syncretism. He called it syncretism, where you take like the meaning and you apply it to a different story. I think he showed us to look deeper as well, even with that, look beyond just the letters on the page. And I think not only that, but he really called to mind the fact that we were part of like a great being in a sense. And once we appreciate this, we transcend like our limited perceptions and the idea of something outside of us, and instead come to see ourselves as part and parcel of that great being. Again, just kind of, even though he wasn't explicitly religious, he still kind of communicated that, like, there's something more than just where we're at right now. And it's good to be aware of that, tie into that beauty, like, just being able to take it all in at the end of the day. I think that was one thing that really left a mark on me, from his jokes to just how he carried himself, you know?
Yeah, more than a religious man, I think he was a faithful man. Like, he really believed in things. Because, he struck me as a family man.
Definitely.
That's, at the end of the day, you have to humble yourself down and realize that at the end of things, your family's what was with you in the beginning and it's going to be with you until the end, you know?
Definitely. I think he was just like a very, very devoted man to his family, his faith, and definitely to us as students.
Oh,
like all phases of his life, he was just like devoted, and he kind of makes it like it's a duty to be devoted to the things that are important to you in your life.
He was a very dedicated man, and like you were saying, that the United States, the culture is just so driven, and people never stop to actually think about what they're doing. And I remember Mr. Rogers told me a quote once, saying, "The modern man likes to pretend that his thinking is wide awake, but the wide awake thinking is what led us into mazes of the nightmare, in which torture chambers are endlessly repeated in the mirrors of reason." So he was someone who took that quote and really showed us how some people will never get out of a loop of superficiality. He was someone that was a true example of someone that took time to be dedicated to his family, to his faith, to his students. So.
Yeah, he was a happy man. Yeah.
Above all else, for sure.
Yeah, I remember once I told him, "Why are you so happy?" He says, "I have everything I want. My family, I have everything." And what he told me that's really struck me was that you have to know what makes you happy, because otherwise you're gonna get there and you're not gonna enjoy it because you don't know what makes you happy.
Do y'all remember how he always used to decorate his room with different art pieces too? I remember he kind of taught us stuff even with that. I think there's another quote he wrote on the board. It was, he said, "Indeed, many contemporary aestheticians would insist that beauty in art is often sentimental or fraudulent, and that aesthetics no longer focuses on the appreciation of beauty." But at the same time, even though he wrote that out, I feel like he kind of showed us the opposite. We still have the ability to appreciate the beauty in art and everything around us. I think he didn't want us to lose hope in a sense. Like lost that, because I think above all he wanted to instill hope in us for our future, for ourselves. But he also shows that the art, with art, the truth of conveying something so meaningful and effectively, that's emotional power in this case, inspiring faith. I think he wanted to inspire us too. Just inspire, like, again, that thought process we were talking about, just looking beyond ourselves. At the same time, keeping the truth in mind. So remember, there was like one more quote that kind of struck me. He said, but whether or not these truths are truths about external reality, they may well be important truths about ourselves. So we focus on the external, but we let the external inform us of the internal. You know? To us, it just may be a painting at first glance, but then he taught us to think deeper. What does that external reality tell us about ourselves and how we operate? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I remember another quote he wrote on the board was, one of the more enduring beliefs that art in both Western and Asian cultures is that art reveals deep truths about the world, perhaps even truths that can or not be articulated by science or philosophy.
Definitely.
So definitely he went deeper with that art. He really showed us how different pieces can really make you feel a certain way.
Definitely. I remember, one time it was a simple drawing his daughter had done for him on the fridge, but even that, me buying that, we saw that his daughter loves it. Even those simple things can communicate those truths we don't see all the time. I definitely agree with that.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, we saw a lot of people yesterday, and I hope they're okay. I mean, it's a really tough time for all of us.
Honestly, yeah, I think that whenever we're emotional, we kind of get motivated to do things that we wouldn't do normally. So I hope nobody takes this so far as to do something like that, because they would probably regret it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, most of the time I remember when Mr. Rogers and I used to speak, apart from being a teacher, he acted like a friend, like a mentor to me. And he used to say that, not everything that you think in your mind is real. So, basically what is real will remain real and will be real for the rest of the time, right? And so let's say I would tell him that sometimes, I was feeling kind of down because of what someone said to me. But he told me, it's just not real, it's all in your head. You should follow your mom. So
Yeah, he always had really good advice to give us.
If you think about it, everything in this world is temporary anyway, so even if you feel sad, that sadness will go away eventually. That's kind of like the culture that we have to believe in, that everything is temporary, we're temporary, everything we do is temporary. It's sad to think that way, but that's just the way life is.
Yeah, there's certain things that make some of us happy though, like nature and the beauty within nature. And I know some people, they go and they choose to live in certain places, even though it may be more expensive, like the cost of living, but they still choose to live in certain places because just being around their surroundings. For example, in California, people go outside and they're automatically happier. So for mental state, I think there's certain things that can make us temporarily happy.
For some people, it's just their culture, their family and the things that they know. Just knowing that they have something that traces back and that they can follow helps them feel better. So sometimes coming to new places will cause you to change or adapt to a new culture. So I know coming here to the West probably would change somebody else. Their culture, even though they try to keep it alive and stuff like that, they kind of westernize it. That's just super common here in America, but it's just the way that things happen.
Yeah, whenever we moved here from Mexico, my dad, he still kept the culture, but my mom adopted the American culture. Mm-hmm. So seeing that within our household and seeing how everything just mixed, it's really weird because I also experienced the Mexican culture at home, but I would be at school most of the day, so I would see the American culture. So yeah.
Yeah, so everything comes back around. If you do something to follow your mom's culture or newfound, or if your dad's, everything that you do kind of forms itself and your experiences will mold you. So everything that you go through is kind of making up who you are each minute and you don't even realize it. So I just think that's crazy. Even this changes us.
For sure, it's definitely an experience that will stick in all of our lives.
It's so nice to see you guys again. Like, I know it's only the second day that we meet each other in so many years, but despite the fact that you guys look so different, I feel like we're back in elementary or middle school, and like our minds are the same. And it's crazy that we tolerate changes in people's appearance, but if our minds are the same, we still connect the same way. I think that's like a big point about the self that we don't realize that we have.
Yeah, it's really cool that we all kind of think the same still.
Yeah, well, our experiences from our past mold who we are, so the self is just a reflection of the past. I guess that's why we still bond the same, but regardless, like, it's unfortunate that we have to go through this situation.
I think Mr. Rogers, like, I know you all talked about like reality and stuff like that, but for me, I don't forget, like, you know, he was transcendent, like his faith was transcendent onto me at least. His belief in God, and as well as that, like, the emphasis that God can also be looked at like a universal spirit, was very key to me. I mean, just his belief in God and see how devoted he was to it, it was really like touching. It hit deep for me, and throughout the years, even from the time we were in class to now, my belief in God just grew and grew, and now he's with God, and he's in a better place now, and he's gonna be looked at, you know, up there.
I mean, yeah, he's definitely in a better place now, and it's just good to know that we'll see him in the future up in heaven.
Yeah, we should go look at him one more time.